So let's talk about pivoting. Hi, my name is Sol. I use all pronouns. Welcome to our archive. There's many things that we're going to be looking at on this channel. The intention of this channel so we can come together and learn, unlearn, and grow together. I want to be very clear that I'm not always going to have the best takes. I'm making takes based on the information that I have today, but I'm always willing and able and I'm open to changing my perspective when I have new information. The older I get, the less I care about being right and the more I care about learning. So know that today I might have a take that in a day, in 6 months, in a year, 5 years, I might be like, why would we say that? Because I look back to things I've said in the past and I feel that way. So thank you for your grace and your patience as you watch me grow and as we grow together. So for today's video, I'm going to be talking about pivoting. More specifically, I want us to look at my undergraduate journey because I'm going to share this personal anecdote with the hopes of it serving somebody who is in the process of maybe making a pivot. Oh my god, it's getting hot. Let me turn on this fan because oh my god. Anyway, okay. So I'm the first one who was born here in the United States, and therefore the first one who navigated higher education and academia in America. My mom traveled here while she was pregnant with me and arrived here when she was 8 months pregnant with me. So a lot of my growing up was also her growing up, and we were growing up together. Because of the lack of access that we had to these spaces, we didn't really as a family have information about colleges or universities. We didn't understand loans, we didn't understand degrees, we didn't understand a lot of this. And so I went off of what I was told by my college counselor. I have many theories. Huh? Many theories, and the tinfoil hats more and more every day, but I'll keep it to myself. I listened to the advice that I was given by my college counselor, and that was to go to a school that was a small liberal arts school in upstate New York. As a native born and raised in LA,
Estamos perdidas. Perdidas, perdidas.
I don't remember where I was. Anyway, college counselor suggests that I go to this really small liberal arts school in upstate New York, and I agreed. I'll take accountability in that I had only applied to schools in upstate New York because I didn't want to have an acceptance letter in California that made me decide to stay there. So it was either community college or go to this small school. And because of the perception that community college has, even to this day, I think that's a big reason why I was pushed in the direction of going to this 4 year institution. So I arrived there. Long story short, I very quickly realized one, it's way too cold. Respectfully, my family's from the canton. I was not made to be in the snow in upstate New York. It's literally not in my DNA. One, it was too cold. Two, I was pulling out loans, working borderline full time, and still I couldn't really afford it technically. And when I got my financial aid packet for my second year, it came to be that I truly could not afford it. Like I was gonna have to pull out more loans, I was gonna have to work extra hours, and even then, there wasn't gonna be enough to cover the new cost for attending this school. So I decided to withdraw, and that was a very, very difficult, not only choice to juggle, but then to make, because as the first one navigating higher education, it was a big sense of pride for me to have arrived at this 4 year institution because of what it serves as a status in immigrant communities, especially communities like mine and my family, who, for almost all of the women in my family, they did not have the chance to graduate from high school. Ni el bachillerato terminaron. So for me, it was a big pride to have gotten to this 4 year institution, and having to withdraw was really painful. But I chose to withdraw and return to community college with faith that it would lead me down the path that I was meant to go down. And that's exactly what ended up happening. So when I withdrew, I went to my local community college, and I had enough credits from my AP courses and also from my first year at that 4 year institution to essentially finish with a political science degree. And while I knew at that point that I was not interested in finishing a bachelor's in political science, but that I instead wanted to switch to an international studies or relations focus, I also knew that in the long term game, I should, and in this case, it made more logical sense to just finish with a degree in political science at my community college, and then when I arrived to my 4 year to change degrees. And so I was able to do that. I didn't have to take an excess amount of classes because of all of the credits that I had, and I was able to work full time at an immigration law firm, which really continued to affirm my decision of switching from degrees from political science to international studies. And now a big reason why I decided to switch from political science to international studies was because, oh my god, hold on. If that's been noticeable this whole time,
Perdidas.
is it the Virgo in me? Is it the OCD in me? I don't know. Anyway, I decided to switch degrees because my desire to study political science came from the fact that I was born and raised into a family that was undocumented when I was born in the United States. And I understood very early on in my life how different my life was to my family's by the simple fact that I was born in the United States and therefore was a citizen of the United States with a social security number, a passport, things that as Americans we oftentimes take for granted. And so my desire to get a degree in political science was because I believed, as many first gen students often hear, that if I wanted to go into law, that political science was one of the best routes, if not the best route to go. And what I quickly learned when I was seeking political science courses versus seeking international studies courses is that they both could look at a same issue, like the economy, for example, but political science was going to frame it on a more America first type perspective. And it wasn't always giving America propaganda, but it could very easily tether that line. Whereas in international studies, what I appreciated was that we were looking at various topics that the United States was involved in, and some the are you okay, mommy? Pelus, girl, I'm a hypochondriac, so having a dog who is so sensitive. Are you okay, mommy? Oh, 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 she has some words. She has some words. So I appreciated that in international studies, we could look at an issue, but that issue had a framework that understood that things were interconnected. It understood that while we can look at something, there's always going to be a ripple effect in it, and there will always be various communities that are affected by this decision, whether they are directly in the area where the decision was made or whether it would impact or not. And so I, as a child of immigrants, really appreciated this nuanced perspective where it wasn't trying to position information as propaganda, but instead was objectively presenting information so we can look at why things got to where that event happened or that moment happened, and then what happens afterward after something happens. And of course, depending on the professor you have, depending on the institution you have, depending on the book you're reading, everything is in some degree propaganda. But I at least felt that if I compared political science to international studies, I preferred the framework in which we looked at global issues within an international studies perspective. So when I was able to transfer to my 4 year university, I knew that I wanted to switch my degree. So I switched my degree to international studies and I loved it so much. I was learning so much about my family, about the people around me, about communities that I grew up with, about communities that I knew nothing about, but who were being impacted by very similar things because they were being impacted by the same oppressors and oppressive systems. And so I genuinely really loved what I was studying. And then COVID happened. So I arrived at my university in fall of 2019. And so within my first year, I had already applied because I was going to go study abroad and rah, 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 woo, doo, woo. And then in the winter of 2020, we were then informed that in the spring we were not going to be returning because COVID happened and that this study abroad program that I had was going to be canceled. And so now I was in a position where I had to pivot from being able to live on campus, go in person, get like live the university fantasy to now going remote, studying remote, and having to go back to my household, the very same household that this entire process started and got so long because I was trying to run away from. And so I'm very lucky and fortunate that I was able to come home. And I acknowledge that a lot of people don't have that same luxury and privilege of coming home. And so I was able to come home when COVID happened. But it was really, really hard to be back home, to be with my family, to be with my younger siblings, to be back in the environment that triggered me and that created so much of my trauma, and also be navigating higher education as the first one in my family, now doing it during COVID. And so I was really stressed. And I remember at this time, there were so many stressors going on in my life. And I had two mentors at this time who showed me and made me aware of the fact that because of the blue and gold plan in which I was under as a Californian resident who comes from a low income background, I was able to stay an extra year at my university and it wasn't going to be too much of a financial burden on me. And while at this point, I was 4 going on 5 years into my undergraduate journey. I just wanted to be done. I also knew that if I tried to rush to the finish line, I was going to get there on E. My tank was going to be completely empty. And so I decided to stay an extra year, which meant that I was going to finish my undergraduate journey in at least 6 years. And while, again, because I grew up in a household where perception mattered a lot and the way that las apariencias importaban mucho. And so we cared a lot in our house about what people thought about us. And so for me, whenever I was making these decisions, I would always think about what other people would think instead of grounding myself in what is best for me. And in that moment with these mentors, it like hit me that this was one of those moments of, wait, I don't care what people have to say if it took me 6 years to get here. I know why it's taking me so long. And I know and I trust that it's for a reason. And so I decided to stay an extra year and I finished with a bachelor's in international studies in 2022. So there was so much pivoting that happened in this journey. There were many times in which if I would have stayed on the original path in which I was in, I don't know where my journey would have ended up in. And on some everything everywhere all at once type stuff, like I know that there's so many different things that could have happened, but el que hubiera no existe. And where I'm at today in life, none of what I've constructed brick by brick would be this way if I hadn't pivoted and if I hadn't removed all of those voices that made me doubt myself, that made me question myself in moments where I genuinely knew what was best for me. And so I share this again because there are many moments where maybe it is time to pivot and people around us may question why we're pivoting because from an outsider perspective and in the world in which maybe that person or that group has been socialized, they think that where you're at right now is the best thing for you. And so pivoting doesn't make sense. Why would you pivot if you're right where you're meant to be? But the reality is that if you're questioning it and your gut is telling you, then are you where you need to be? And sometimes maybe we are. Sometimes our nervous system just needs to step away for a second to recalibrate. But in the moment where it's not a matter of recalibrating and it's a matter of this system just does not work, it's okay to pivot. And it's not a failure to walk away from something. I always try to orient myself in that. I don't want to be, I don't know. I don't even want to say like I don't want to be in my 40s. I don't want to look a year from today and be like, damn, what would have happened if I would have done that thing? Like, again, el que hubiera no existe. So if it's within my means and if it makes sense for me to pivot, I'm going to pivot. So yeah, know and trust that the universe is always going to conspire in your favor as long as you're moving with good intentions and you're honoring your heart and your soul. So I appreciate you so much for being here. I hope you have a day as beautiful as you. Please, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And there is a Substack link down below where you can also find articles about the different topics that I have here on this channel. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being in our archive, and I'll see y'all later.